this is Gina. Today I'm going to show you how to make this fringed bracelet with the Sparkling Romance Treasure Bag beads. However, this is a very basic technique that you can use with any beads you have on hand. So don't worry about having to have the bag. Just get out some pretty beads and you will be able to do this. And I will show you exactly what I'm using so you can get something similar if you'd like in the next part of the tutorial. Let me see if I can get this off. There we go. And this is what it looks like. Oops, had a stray bead on my mat there. This is what it looks like. Isn't that pretty? And I'll get you in a little closer so you can see. And you can make this as full or as minimal as you would like. It's a very, very simple, basic process, and it just is a really good way to use up bead soups or any of your extra beads laying around. You can do this all in seed beads too. I have done these in the past many times with just 8/0s and 6/0s as my fringe, and I can use all different colors, the Picasso type, all that, and they turn out really cute. And they were always a hit at like craft shows and stuff like that. They sell really good, but I hadn't done that in a very long time, so I thought I'd go ahead and do a bracelet. This is very easy to do a necklace out of too. It takes a little longer, of course, but you can make it short like this and add chain to it too, or you can make the entire thing fringed, and it's a really, really pretty little necklace too. So just knowing the fringe stitch is going to help you make an entire set if you'd like, because you can do the same thing for earrings. So let's go ahead and look at what it takes to make this particular project, and we'll get started. Okay, for this project today, I'm going to be using a bunch of my beads that are left over from the Sparkling Romance Treasure Bag. However, you can use any beads that you have on hand for this. I have just made a bead soup. I have some leftover beads, 3x4 rondelles. I had one strand in there in the bag that was a multicolor kind of pastel, and I used a bunch of the opaque ones for a bracelet previous to this video, but I have a bunch of the translucent ones left, and then I have a whole bunch of these little 3x4 half silver, well, get out of there, half silver lavender beads, and I've mixed some of those in. So I have just a mix of 3x4 rondelles, and then I've mixed together some of these 6mm round crackle beads, a 6x4 lavender paint rondelle, and I have put some of the imitation opalite, pink opalite beads in, and you can mix anything you'd like. So I'm going to use a bunch of small ones, the 3x4s, and a bunch of 6mm rounds. However, you can use most any shape and size to do this with. You don't want to get really big, but you can use most any shape and size. It'll work. I'm also going to be using some seed beads. So in the treasure bag, you had a little tube of seed beads, 8/0s. These are 8/0s Silverline Pink. You also might have gotten a blush, sweet blush color, and either one will work, or any seed bead you have on hand that's an 8/0. I do recommend Toho's for this simply because it has a bigger hole and we're going to be fringing through these quite a bit. So I have the 8/0 silver lined, and then in my fringe I'm going to use some of these silver ones. So I have the galvanized permanent finish aluminum 8/0s also, and then I have the galvanized permanent finish aluminum 15/0s and a few 11/0s. Sometimes some of the holes on these beads are a little big, and to fringe through it you'll need an 11/0 instead of a 15/0. Plus we're going to use a couple of 11/0s in our clasping part. So you don't need a lot of 11/0s, but you need quite a few 15/0s. Then I'm going to be using a clasp and a closed jump ring for the closure on this bracelet. And I'm using a lobster claw clasp. You can use any clasp that you would like for this. You just sew up through the hole, just like I'm going to show you how to sew up through the hole on this, or sew around the jump ring. So either way will work just fine. I'm going to be using a size 12 beading needle and 6-pound Fireline. You can use 8 or 10-pound nano fill also, but you don't want to go too much higher than that, because we are going to be fringing through these beads and sewing through them a lot. So anything bigger than a 6-pound is probably going to be a little too big. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay, to start this project, you want to put onto your needle about 4 to 5 feet of thread, or what's comfortable for you to work with. You will need to extend during this process, so if you do not know how to extend your Fireline, I will put a link for a video you can reference in the description box beneath the video player that will show you how to do that. So how we're going to begin this is we're going to pick up 4 of our 8/0 seed beads onto our needle, just like this, and then draw them down to the end here. You don't have to leave a long tail, but you need enough to hold on to and ensure that as you're sewing you don't pull your beads off the thread. Now we're going to go up from the tail side into the first 2 8/0 seed beads, just like this. Then we're going to hold on to the tail and hold on to those first 2 seed beads and pull your thread until the second 2 seed beads lay on top of the first 2, just like this, or lay next to it, I guess I should say. Now we're going to sew back through the second 2 seed beads right here. Then we're going to go into the first 2 one more time, just like this. Then pull on your tail thread, pull on your working thread, and just kind of line everything up the best you can. Then we're going to pick up an 11/0 seed bead and then an 8/0 seed bead, and we're going to put our clasp on. So we are going to drop this 11/0 and 8/0 down to the little piece that we started. Then we're going to go through the hole of our clasp, or the loop on our clasp. Mine is really wide, so I'm going to have to sew through it a little extra, but it'll work. And I'm just going to bring this down like this, and then I'm just going to go back into the 8/0 seed bead and just ignore that 11/0. I'm going to pick it up in my hand, hold on to the 8/0, the whole piece actually, and just draw everything up. Slide it between my fingers and tighten it, just like this. Now I'm going to pick up another 11/0 seed bead, and I'm going to go into the set of 8/0s that I have not attached to yet. So the set next to the one we're coming out of. And then we're going to hold on to the piece again. I'm just holding on to the 8/0s, and I'm just going to pop that 11/0 down, pull everything tight, and this is what I have, just like this. Now I'm going to sew through this a few times. So I'm coming out of these 2 beads, I'm going to cross over, and I'm just going to go up through the 2 8/0s, the 11/0, and then I will go up into the 8/0 and the clasp if I can. My clasp is really thick, so there we go. And then I'll just give it a little tug. Now I'm going to go back down into the 8/0, the 11/0, and the 2 8/0s on the other side, just like this. Pull tight. Now we're going to want to do that 2 more times. We do have 2 passes through it, but we're going to do it 2 more times just to make sure that it's secure, and then we can take our tail off. If we take it off too soon as we're doing this, it will pull apart. So go ahead and sew through this 2 more times, just like I showed you. Cross over to the 8/0s and go up into the 11/0, the 8/0, the clasp, and then back down the other side. And do that 2 more times, and we'll be back. Okay. So I have sewn back through 2 more times and secured my clasping really well. And now what we want to do is pick up our piece. I'm going to move the tail out of the way, And you can see between the two 8/0s we have this little thread bridge. We're going to go underneath this thread bridge with our needle and create a loop in our thread, and then pass our needle through the loop and tie a knot right on this thread bridge, centering our thread so that we can begin to make our bracelet, the part that we will fringe through. Then you can go ahead and remove the tail, just like that. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to string 8/0 seed beads. 8/0 seed beads? Jeez, we're going to put 8/0 seed beads on this thread until we get to a length that will work for us. Now I am going to make a 7-inch bracelet. So I want to have at least 6.5 inches of beads. So I'm not counting my clasping area. So when you measure it, after you put yours on, just measure from here to 6.5 if you want a 7-inch bracelet, and that'll work out fine. Otherwise, you can measure from the tip and just make the length that you would like. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to start picking up 8/0 seed beads onto our needle, just like this, and bring it down the thread. And we're just going to string them on just like we're stringing a necklace or something. And we're just going to keep doing that until we get enough beads to be 1 inch short of the length we want, and that's not counting the clasping. If you're counting your clasping, if you're measuring from the tip of your clasping, then you will need to leave it 1/2 inch short, depending upon the size of your clasping. So just continue picking up 8/0 seed beads and dropping them onto your thread, just like this. And we'll be back as soon as I get the length that I want. I'll show you what I've got and we'll move on from there. Okay, so I have put all my beads on to the length that I want. Now, if I measure, not measuring my clasp, if I measure, I have just a little over 6 inches of beads. If I measure from my clasping, I have 6.5, so that I know that once I put my other side of the clasping on, I'll have around a 7.5 inch bracelet. So you want to measure to the point that you are about a 1/2 inch short, or not quite a 1/2 inch short, of the length you want. And if you're measuring from your clasp, I measured the other way just to show you, because we'll all have different sizes of clasps. So just measure, put your clasp on, measure, and make sure you're about a 1/2 inch short. And then you're going to pick up 4 more seed beads after you have that length. And you're going to drop them down. Then we'll get you in close. You are going to go down to the 4th seed bead and go up through 2 of them. And then pull your thread while holding on to those 2. Squish them down to the other beads just like this. And now we formed another ladder stitch down here on this side, just like we had on the other side when we began. We will center, once we've put our clasping on, we will center again by sewing through the length of the beads, and that will pull it over. So we'll go through this bead here, and then we'll sew the entire length of the bracelet, and that will center it. So what we're going to do now that we have folded these 2 over, we're going to go into the second set, because we're coming out of the first set. Going to go into the second set and pull our thread down. Hold on to them so they don't separate from the long strand of beads here, and then go up through the second set. Again, hold on to it, otherwise you'll pull it out of whack. And then you can pick up an 11/0 and an 8/0, and then your closed jump ring, or whatever clasping you're using. So I'm going to drop this down, and then I'm going to go through my jump ring, just like this. And I recommend a closed jump ring for this, or you can sew on a wire guardian too. Just remember, wire guardians increase the length of your bracelet, so keep that in mind. Then we're going to go into the 8/0 seed bead right here. I'm going to hold on to that 8/0 seed bead and the top of my bracelet, and I'm just going to pull until everything is lined up, just like this. Then I'm going to pick up an 11/0 seed bead, and I'm going to go into the second set over here that I'm not attached to of the 8/0 seed beads. And I am going to just pull this 11/0 down until it sits perfectly in there. Now we're going to cross over and sew up through, and we'll sew up through a couple of times. So we're going to go over, go into the 8/0s, the 11/0, the 8/0 on top of the 11/0, and then through the clasp, just like this, and pull. And then again, back down into the 8/0, the 11/0 on the other side, and the two 8/0s on the other side from which we just did, just like this. Now go ahead and do that, cross over and do that again 2 more times, and we'll be back. Okay, so I have secured my clasping, and now I just wanted to show you, you want to make sure when you start doing your clasping on the other side, you can leave just a tiny bit of slack, like a millimeter or 2 of slack, but not much. You don't want these beads to be really tight, but you don't want them to be really tight, or you won't be able to sew back through them, but you don't want to have a ton of slack either. If you move it around a little bit and you can get a little bit of movement in there, that's fine. Now we're going to bring this down, and we're going to focus on this end here. So you can see I have just a tiny bit of slack here. Not much, just a little bit. Now I'm coming out of this side, so we sewed up through, and now we're coming out of this side. We're going to go into the first bead on the long length of the 8/0s here, and we're just going to pick up as many of these beads as we can and pull through. Now you can see that pulled my little end center, so now it's not off to one side, and I'm going to continue, and I'm going to sew the entire length, sew through the entire length of my bracelet. So I'm just going to pick up where I left off, pick up as many as I can. Don't miss any, because if you do, it'll bunch your bracelet. So make sure you go through each and every bead, and just continue traveling all the way through until you get to the end of your beads, just like that, and we'll be back. Okay, so I have sewn all the way up. I'm coming out of my last 8/0 seed bead right before the double 8/0s start in my ladder stitch where my clasping is. And now I'm going to sew up into one of these sets of 8/0s right here, and I'm going to pull my thread through, and then I'm going to cross over. I'm just going to ignore these 11/0s, and I'm going to cross over into the second set of 8/0s again, just like this. Pull this down, and then I'm going to go back into the first 8/0 seed bead, and just the first 8/0 right here, just like that. Now we're going to start fringing. We're going to start with our 4x3 beads, and we're going to do about, I don't know, an inch and a half of, probably inch and a half of just 4x3s, and then we'll start putting in some bigger beads in the center, and then go back down to smaller ones. I'm going to show you how to do this fringing, and then I will show you exactly how we'll arrange it when we're going to move into the bigger beads here. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up a 4x3 rondelle and a 15/0 seed bead. And you can just do this randomly, any color, or you can do it all one color. You can just do this all in 8/0 and 6/0 seed beads. That turns out really cute too. Fringing through the seed beads with seed beads works really good. So you can do it any way you want. Now we're going around the 15/0, and then we are going to go into the very next 8/0. So really, let me reposition here. So I've dropped my 8/0 down, I've got my 15/0 down. I'm going to go back into the rondelle, and then into the next 8/0 seed bead on the long length of 8/0s. Coming out of this one, going into this one. Then I'm just going to pull until that 15-0 comes down and pops on top of that bead, and now I've got a little fringe. And I'm going to pick up a different color, and I'm going to pick up another 15-0 seed bead. I'm going to drop it down to my bracelet. Get that 15-0 down there. And then I'm going to go around the 15-0, back into the 3x4 rondelle, and then I'm going to go into the very next seed bead. So I'm coming out between these two here. I'm going to go into this one right here, if you can see that. So where you're coming out, you just go right back in and just go into the one next to it. So I'm coming out of this one, I will go directly into this one after I have my bead on. So now I'm going to pick up another rondelle, and I'm going to pick up a 15-0. And then I'm going to go back through the rondelle and then into the very next bead. Whoops, right here. So I'm coming out of this one here. I'm going to go into this one here. Can you see that? I hope so. Let's see if we can get closer. Just like that. And you don't want to go through two. You just want to go through one. So wherever there's a little opening between the beads, you're coming out and you're going right back into that opening, but you're aiming towards the next bead in line. And then you just pull this down, and there you have it. And let's do another one. So I'm coming out right here. I'm going to pick up another rondelle and a 15-0. And I'm going to drop these down. And then I'm going to go back through the rondelle and then into the next seed bead. So I'm coming out there, I'm going in here, right next to it. So basically we're just sewing in the crack. Oh no, I'm going to get a lot of grief for that. But there's a little crack between the two beads. We're sewing in the crack, okay? Now, we're going to continue doing this, and we're going to do it until we have about 1.5 inches, and then we're going to start doing bigger beads. So I am just going to show you how to do the bigger beads now, because I have one prepared that I can show you my next step with. So this is how you're doing the big beads, or the little beads. Once we get a little bit further down the line, we'll start doing bigger beads. So what we will do when we do a bigger bead is we'll go ahead and pick it up, and some of these might need 11-0 instead of a 15-0. So you want to look at the hole. If the hole looks like it's too big for a 15-0, use an 11-0. I think I can use a 15-0 on this though. So I've got my big bead, my 15-0. I'm coming out of the crack here. I am going to go around the 15-0, back into the big bead, and then back into the crack, and aim away from the bead that I'm coming out of. So the next bead right next to the one I'm coming out of, and pull this down. Same process. Now see, I had a little loop there. If that happens, just pull on your 15-0 and then pull on your working thread until you can straighten it out, just like that. Now, when you do a big bead like this, your next bead has to be a small one, just so that it works out a little bit better. So I'm doing a big bead, and then I'm going to do a 3x4 rondelle. So I'm going to pick up my rondelle, I'm going to pick up my 15-0 seed bead, I'm going to drop it down, and then I'm going to go around the 15-0, back into the crack, and then into the next bead, just like this. And then I will go ahead and do a big bead. And so I will pick up another big bead, and then a 15-0, drop it down, go around the 15-0, whoa, come on, you, go around the 15-0, and then go back into the crack, and out the next bead in line, just like that. And that's how you'll do your bigger beads. So I am going to go ahead and go off camera and get my other piece and show you exactly the measurements I did, because you will do just the small beads for a portion, and then you'll go into the larger beads. And then, of course, if you want to mix it all the whole length, you can. It just seems to kind of fit on the wrist a little bit better, flow a little bit better if it's smaller towards the back and bigger in the center. So I am going to get my other piece and we will go to the next step. Okay, so now you can see what I have done. I've done 1.5 inches from right here, right where the 8/0s are, to here is about an inch and a half of the 4x3 rondelles, and then I moved into my 6mm rounds and 4x3 rondelles. Every other one is a 4x3 and a 6 and then a 4x3. You get it. And I did about 3 inches of that, and then I went back into 1.5 inches. So actually I started from this end and I did 1.5 inches, 3 inches, 1.5 inches, and now I'm coming out of the very last 8/0 seed bead here. Now you can make this as full or as minimal as you like. I'm going in between each and every bead. So this is what it looks like after the first pass. If you decide you like this, then you can sew through and tie off. If you want to make it fuller, then you'll do what I'm going to do next. And what I'm going to do with this next pass is I'm just going to do some pink and silver 8/0 seed beads to kind of fill it in, and not so many gaps in it. But if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. Or you can do this whole thing in seed beads too, and you can do as many passes as you would like. You can keep it kind of flat on one side, or you can do the other side and make it more round and really full. Either way, you can make a whole necklace doing this. It's really a very simple way to make a fringy necklace or bracelet. So what I've done is I've come out of this very last 8/0 after putting my last bead in here, my last fringe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass up through the 2 8/0s in my clasping right here. Now if you want to, you can sew all the way up through your clasping, but we sewed through it so many times it's secure, you don't need to do that. It might be a little hard to get through. So now I'm just going up through these 2 8/0s, and I'm going to gently pull until my thread is all the way through, and then I'm going to cross over and go down through these 2 8/0s on this side. And again, pull my thread all the way through. And then I am going to go up through the first 8/0 seed bead again on the long length of beads here. And I am going to just pull all the way through. Then I'm going to pick up one of my seed beads, and I think I'm going to go with the silver one first. So I'm going to pick up an 8/0 seed bead, and then I'm going to pick up a 15/0. Now if you're using 8/0s and 6/0s to do this, you might need to use an 11/0 on a 6/0, but that turns out really cute too, just to fringe through with 8/0s and 6/0s and do the whole thing that way. It's really cute. So now I have my 8/0 down, I have my 15/0 on top. I'm going to go back through the 8/0 just like I did on the rondelles, and then go back in the crack and into the next bead right there, and I'm going to pull. Now that there's so much fringe, you just have to pull slowly, or you're going to find that your thread will want to tie up around the other fringe stitches. So you need to just kind of be slow and gentle with it and watch it, and if it starts to tangle, untangle it before you pull it tight. Now I'm going to put a pink one on. So I've got a pink 8/0 and I've got a 15/0. I'm going to drop these down, and the crack of the beads right there. I'm just kind of spreading things out, and you can move along the sides of them too. I won't stay just in the center. I'll move around and make sure that my little 8/0s are kind of distributed evenly, and then I'll go back into the crack of the 2 beads here, and then into the bead next to the one I'm coming out of, just like this. And I'm just going to go the entire length of the bracelet. I'll put pink and silver all the way down. I may put a couple pink together, a couple silver together. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be every other one, but you just do it how you think it'll look pretty, and just continue fringing all the way to the very end. When we get to the very end, we will come back and we can make another pass if we want to, or we can just tie off. Now, if you need to extend at any point, just make sure that you make the little tiny extension, the little extension knot very small. So it would be best to use a thread zapper or something to make the little blobs at the end of your thread. Otherwise, just really control your flame and make sure that you make those little blobs very small so that you can just continue working. And you'll understand more if you don't know what I'm talking about once you watch the video on how to extend your Fireline. All right. So I'm going to continue doing all my fringes with my little 8/0s, and I will come back when I get to the end. Okay, I wanted to show you really quickly how I'm distributing these around. So you can see they're not just all right in the very middle. So what I'm doing after I come out of my bead is I can just pull my thread to one side or the other of the bead, and I can pick up my next fringe. And when I go in to the bead, so I'm coming out of this bead here, I can go in to go around the 15/0, and then I can go in at an angle here and then come out at an angle, so I can get them going on either side of the bracelet too, instead of just straight down the middle. So I'm just kind of parting my beads and going from the sides, or maybe I want to put one right in the middle, then I will go right up towards the middle. So it's just where you move your thread around, the angle you bring your needle through, and all that, so that it distributes them around so that they're everywhere on the bracelet instead of just right in the middle. And that makes a really nice fullness to the bracelet, as you can see. So continue doing your fringing, and once I get all the way to the end, I will be back. I just wanted to make sure you knew how to kind of distribute those around a little bit. Just depends on how you position your needle. Okay, so now I have done a complete pass the entire length of the bracelet, putting in my little 8/0 seed beads, the pink and the silver ones. And you can see, you can push your beads around and make them position the way you want and fill it in really full. So now you can see I have less of a flat looking bracelet and more of a round, full, fringy looking bracelet like this. So that's what this looks like if you put just one more pass. You can do as many passes as you want, though it gets more difficult to do your passes simply because there's so much on it. Your thread gets tangled and it's difficult. 2 passes, especially using the bigger beads, is more than enough. But like I said, that's up to you. You're designing your own piece and you can do it how you want. If you feel like you want to put another pass of seed beads, or you want to go in and put some more crystal in, whatever you want to do, you can do. That works out really well. If you're using all seed beads from the very beginning, 3 passes works really nice on all seed beads. But we have some bigger beads in here, so 2 passes is fine. Now we're coming out right here, and I'm coming out of this very last bead in my long length of beads after putting my last little fringe on right here, this little 8/0 seed bead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to sew up the 2 8/0 seed beads here, if I can. Come here. See if I can get through them. Okay, so I'm going to sew up 1 8/0 seed bead. Try to keep my thread from going everywhere. And pull that down slowly, and then I'll go up the other one. And if I cannot, I can pass over to the one next to it, but I think I can pass through this. So I've actually passed through the 8/0 and the 11/0 here. And I'm going to go ahead and pull my needle through. Trying to keep this from tangling is quite the chore. There we go. So what I'm going to do is right here between these beads, between this 8/0 and this 11/0 here. I'm going to stick my needle between the two 11/0s, and I will create a loop. So if I can go into the middle of these beads here, and you see I'm pulling my thread into a loop, and then I'm just going to make sure that I position my thread to where it'll go down on to the piece of thread between the beads and not on top of the beads. So now I'm going through the loop, and then I'm going to pull this knot down. I'm just going to do it as controlled as I can. There we go. And now I have a knot. Now I can pass back over to the other side. I'm in the 11/0, or I came up the 11/0. So I'll just pass over to the other side, go down the 11/0 and the two 8/0s here, and make sure my thread is not going to get tangled here. Pull through. And then I'm just going to tie another knot here. So I'll go between these two 8/0s on this bottom piece here. Arrange it to where my thread is right between the 8/0 here and the 8/0 that starts my bracelet. Make a loop. And make sure I pull it down between those beads. And don't get your fringe because, you know, it's everywhere. There you go. Just like that. Now I'm just going to go down a few of the 8/0s in the core of my bracelet. So I'm just going to go down these 8/0s, come out, and then I will just cut my thread off. I hope I was in camera. We're going to find out, huh? There we go. And I can't really see it, so I think it's okay. All right, so now that my bracelet is a lot fuller, I'm hoping it's still going to fit me because it ended up to be pretty darn full, but it's really pretty. I think that's really nice. You can do this with any color scheming. You can make it, this is like kind of princessy and little girly and, you know, sweet, but you can do this with like some of those Picasso seed beads and maybe turquoise colors or browns and golds or whatever you want, and make this quite a bit of a different feel. So I did lose some length because of the fullness of the bracelet. So what has happened is my bracelet is 7 inches long like I planned, but I'm losing ½ an inch because of the fullness. So you may want to make this, you will have to make this, if you make it full, you're going to have to make it ½ an inch longer than you originally planned, because the fullness of the bracelet is going to take ½ an inch up on the wrist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an extender on mine, because it's a 7 inch, but it's fitting me like a 6.5 or a 6 inch, and that's too small. So I am going to put a little bit of an extension on the end here. So I'm going to find myself a couple of small jump rings and then a couple more of these texture jump rings, and I'll be back and I'll show you how I make my extension. Okay, so this is how I'm extending it. I'm adding 2 small, about 3 to 4 millimeter jump rings outside diameter in between my 2 closed jump rings, my textured ones, because I can't open them and attach them together, and I want it to be kind of balanced and cute, so I'm putting 2 little jump rings on there. Now I could probably get away with just 1 here for the extension for my wrist, but I'm going to go ahead and put another one on, and then I'm going to make a little dangle for the end just to make it look decorative. You can make this as long or as short as you want, and that way it'll also make it to where if I decide I want to sell this or give it away, it's adjustable for whoever wears it. So I'm just going to open a jump ring from side to side, and I'll show you with the next one, and then I'm going to drop the new jump ring on to the little one right next to the previous jump ring, and then I'm just going to twist it closed. So with your little jump ring, you will find where it opens right here. Place your pliers on either side of the opening and just twist it open, just like this. I'm a little close. Let's back off. And then when you're putting double jump rings on, it helps if you just lay the two jump rings, the big ones that you're attaching to, together. So just lay them together like this and then slip on your new jump ring. The first one doesn't matter, but the second one can be a pain in the rear end, you know. So if you lay them together like that and then close it, it's a little bit easier. And now I have a little extender. Oh, come here. How did I do that? Oh, that was interesting. Okay, so let me fix that. Oh, no, it was just, it's fine. I don't know what it was doing. It was being weird. But now I've got it. That was kind of mind-boggling. Oh, no. Okay, so now I'm going to put a little dangle on the end of here just to make it cuter. And I'm just going to do a simple loop because this is a pretty heavy jump or head pin, so I don't need to do a bunch of wrapping and all that. I am just going to take my flat nose pliers and I am just going to bend this over just above this bead, just like this, and then I am going to cut down the head pin like this. I'm going to take the tip of my round nose pliers, if I can find them. Where are they? There they are. And I'm just going to turn this, putting it flush here, and I'm just going to turn this, then turn my pliers over, turn it as far as I can, turn my pliers over, and continue to turn until I get a loop, just like this. Now I have lots of videos that show you how to do that, and I think most everyone knows how, but if you need more reference, just look at a couple of the videos that I did a lot of looping with, and that will help. So anyway, that's what that looks like, and I am just going to open it now. So I'll find the little part right here. You can see where it rolls around right before the longer length of the wire that goes into the bead, and just lift at the end that's open. And then we're just going to slide it on to the jump ring and close it. Just turn it back the way you opened it. Just go the opposite direction, just like that. And now I have a really cute little bracelet. And I will put it on and show you what it looks like. But I just want you to see, let me back off a little bit. This is what it looks like. That's so cute. And you can always arrange your little bobblies so that they look the way you want them to look. And that's what that looks like. Let me put it on and I'll be right back. Okay, and here's what it looks like. It's my little kid's Band-Aid. But this is what it looks like. And you can see my little dangle and my little extension turned out really cute too. So you can always save it. If you make it and it doesn't fit and it's a little too small, you can always save it. It's harder to change it when it's too big, but if it's a little small, using a lobster claw, it always allows you to add chain to make it a little bigger. So because I didn't allow for the bulk of this bracelet to fit around my wrist, I had to add the extension to save all the work I just did. And it turns out cute, and you'd never know that I actually miscalculated. You would think I did that on purpose. So that's what this looks like. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one, I hope. Bye-bye.